Hello and good morning, friends. Welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture, dear friends, with our ongoing series on organization behavior. Today, we would be talking on one of the most interesting topics. Many of you have been seen while breaching the norms of the organization. So, dear friends, pertaining to what I've said, today we would be covering in detail on workplace deviant behavior. And for this discussion, we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Namita Rajput is a dynamic professor who is currently serving as a principal in Sri Aurobindo Evening College, University of Delhi. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Namita Rajput, and let's try to understand the topic in detail, workplace deviant behavior. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the Dissect lecture.
Good morning, friends. We'll be talking today on the workplace deviant behavior. As you all know, the employee deviance is defined as voluntary behavior that violates basically the significant organizational norms and is so doing threatens the well-being of an organization, its members, or with both. The examples could be stealing, withholding efforts, and acting rudely to the co-workers. So this is the particular concept of the deviant behavior, that the employees are constantly engaged in doing something or the other which is not acceptable to the organizational norms and is not in the well-being and the health of the organization as a whole. So this is done deliberately with all bad efforts, with deception and deviations in the behavior of the employees, with all kind of voluntary aspects into it, that deliberately they are doing something which is not for the well-being and the health of the organization as a whole. So here we have seen the examples of stealing, withholding the efforts, and acting rudely with the co-workers. Now, as a matter of fact, you should always be polite with your co-workers, because you have to work as a team, you have to work for the achievement of the organizational goals, you have to show the teamwork, etc. So there are so many concerns in this regard, and if it is not done in this regard, we say that the voluntary actions are so bad that they are actually causing damage to the organizational health. So this is what is the concept of deviant workplace behavior. And of course, these things are so negative that the organization health gets affected, the well-being of the organization gets affected, and overall, it is not in the best interest of the organization as a whole. So let us now talk about the typology of the deviant workplace behavior. So I'll start with the first topology, that is the production deviance. Production deviance, as we have seen the examples here, that is, you leave early before the working hours, you are taking excessive breaks which are not required, you are intentionally working slow so that you are wasting time, you're wasting the resources, you're wasting your efforts, but you're only showing your presence and doing nothing for the organization, and wasting resources. So here we are talking about the production deviance. Any deviance means divergence which is not allowed, and actually you are doing something which is not acceptable and against the organizational norms as such. So we have seen here first the organizational deviance, which talks about the wastage of resources, wastage of time, wastage of money, leaving early. So it is about time, place, energy, and all the aspects relating to the production. So in this aspect, the production deviance takes place, the organizational production gets affected, the organizational resources gets affected, and overall this is not in the health of the organization. So now let us now talk about the property deviance. The first is sabotaging the equipment, accepting the kickbacks, lying above hours worked, stealing from the company. We have seen that there are so many incidents which take place in the organization, which tantamounts to property deviance. Now, for example, you're working as a senior technical assistant in your organization. You have so much of data relating to, suppose if it is an educational institution, private institution, schools, etc., who would be needing in your coming future the assistance of some private organizations like MBA, central government organizations like some good institutions like universities, etc. So in any case, the organizations who would be who are the aspirants of the good students and they become the feeders. So all the information will be sold to them with so much of extra cost you will not even come to know. The organizations are always want of the data of the students who would be taking into consideration the future. For example, you are working with an organization, and for example, third year students, they want to join their MBA courses, so their data would be available with the college. So if any person is doing something or playing with the data or any kind of this sort, so the whole information will be with the outside organization, which is not good for the organization as a whole, and the people would be making money out of it. So this is not a good concept. Suppose you're working for 8 hours and you're lying to your bosses that we were here for about 10 hours or 12 hours. So they are just lying about it, and they are just trying to make some money out of it, so on and so forth. They are also sabotaging the equipment, they are playing with the data files, they are actually spoiling the networks of the organization. For that matter, they are playing with the stealing of the data, they are accepting the kickbacks, and they are topmost in the corruption. That is, there are two aspects of the corruption, like you take money before the work, and there are few incidences in which you take money after the work. So when you're taking before the work, it's corruption. When you are taking the money after the things are done, it's a kickback. So both the aspects are corruptive in nature, and the organization people, if they are doing it, they are into a deviant behavior. They are causing damage to the property of the organization. If they are doing something really bad with the time, resources and money of the organization, it is called as the production deviance. So we have now talked about two typologies of the typology of the workplace deviance. The first we talked about was the production deviance, and the second which we talked about was the property deviance. Now let me come on to the two more aspects and the two more typologies of the workplace deviance. The first is the political deviance, and the last is the personal aggression. So we'll be doing them in detail one by one. Now let me first talk about the political deviance. Showing favoritism to your co-workers or to few of your people in your team, gossiping about co-workers, blaming your co-workers, and competing non-beneficially. Now this is the dynamics which is going around in the organization. There are few workers which you like, there are few workers which you don't like, and the persons which you don't like, you talk nonsense about them, you start gossiping about these people, you show some kind of a favoritism behavior for them, you show some kind of blaming activities to them, although they are not a part of it, but you start blaming them that he must be responsible because he has been showing some acts of this sort, that you can easily blame them, and the people around would also try to believe them. And of course competition in the right spirit is good, but the competition, if it is done in a wrong spirit, is definitely not good. It is not beneficial at all. So they are taking and using the competitive forces which is non-competitive, which is non-beneficial. So we have talked about already the political deviance. This is all aspects which are not good for the organization as a whole. Now coming on to the fourth typology of the workplace deviance. The first is the sexual harassment, which for which we have given 4 sessions, and we have done the sexual harassment at workplace, the types of sexual harassment at workplace in detail in the previous lectures. And the verbal abuse, like you start abusing the people, start using rubbish language, start using the words which has double meanings. So stealing from the co-workers and endangering the co-workers. So these are the acts of the personal aggression, that is, you are under a state of aggression and you are doing something which is absolutely rubbish for the organization, which is not good for the organization, etc. So till now we have discussed the 4 typologies of the workplace deviance. The first is the production deviance, the second is the political deviance, the third is the property deviance, and the fourth is the personal aggression. So these 4 typologies are very important to be understood, so that we are able to understand that what kind of deviant behavior the people have been following, which should not be done at the workplace, because the people would be affected, the production would be affected, the motivational level would be affected, the reputation would be affected. So it has so many multiple spillover impacts. So we should try and stop these things and be docile at your work, be hardworking at your workplace, be very clear with your thought, clear with your mindsets, and should not be engaging into any kind of deviant activities. All these activities, if you do, they are so damaging for the organization that you cannot even understand that it has such a sabotaging impact, damaging impact, wrong impact on them. Now coming on to the deviant workplace behavior versus the ethical behavior. Now let us do this in detail. The deviant workplace behavior focuses on violating the organizational norms, whereas the ethical behavior focuses on what is right or wrong when judged in terms of justice, law, or other societal guidelines. Example is, dumping the toxic waste in a river is not deviant if it conforms with the policies of an organization. On the other hand, reporting this dumping to activities is an ethical behavior. So here we have talked about a very good example that we are violating the aspects behavior when you talk about the deviant workplace behavior, and we are trying to rectify it on the ethical grounds. It is called as the ethical behavior. We have talked about here about the dumping of the toxic waste in the river. This is not deviant if it conforms with the policies of an organization. If the policies allows you to dump the waste in X place or the Y place, this is acceptable. But yes, if you report this dumping to the authorities that this organization is doing something wrong and it is spoiling the environment, it is damaging the environment, it is not a sustainable step, it is leading to rise in the carbon footprints. If you are reporting it to the the authorities, this is an ethical act. Although this is not good from the organizational health point of view, because you are not being loyal to your organization. But yes, if you see the bigger picture of it, you are working as a environmental hero. You're talking about the environment as a whole, because we do not have a separate universe. We share the universe. So it's our prime responsibility to conserve and save the environment. So if he's reporting to the authorities that the organization is into dumping of the toxic waste, which is definitely not a good step, which is not a sustainable step, so it has to be stopped. So if you're doing this, this is an ethical behavior which is acceptable to the society at large. This is acceptable to the universe at large, and it has more positive spillover impacts compared to throwing of the waste in a particular river, which is of course not a good act on the organization point of view. Now there are two types, the positive deviant behavior and the negative deviant behavior. We'll be talking about each one by one. So first let me talk about the positive deviant behavior. Positive deviance is defined as international behavior that departs from the norms of a referent group in honorable ways. Example, innovative behavior, non-compliance with dysfunctional directives, criticizing the incompetent superiors. So now the positive deviant behavior talks about a kind of a behavior which is definitely not having a negative repercussion, but yes, if your superiors are not competent, you must report this to even the higher authorities. Innovative behavior, non-compliance with dysfunctional directives, and criticizing the incompetent superiors are few examples of the positive deviant behavior. Although, as a matter of fact, there is a chain of command which flows from top to bottom. Even the authority flows from top to bottom. The values emanate from the top level management. So if the people are competent enough, if the people are good enough, if the people are healthy enough to incorporate all these things, this will be good. If, for example, the superiors are not good, you must report. If they are asking you to do something bad, you must report. So all these things, although from the organization point of view, from the turbulence point of view, from the fluctuation point of view, it is bad. But yes, if you see the deep insight of it, the impacts and the effects are positive. So that is why we call it as positive deviant behavior. Now, what are the antecedents of the workplace deviant behavior? So we'll be talking about antecedents of workplace deviant behavior. In this first, we'll be talking about individual factors. The first is personality. The second is locus of control. And the third is Machiavellism. Personality, type A and hostile attributional bias personalities tend to being aggressive, emotionally reactive individuals. Personalities that like hurting and discomforting people have predisposition to behave deviantly. Again, the personality matters a lot when you talk about the workplace deviant behavior. Here we are talking about personality type A. They are hostile with very attributional biased behavior. They are having biased personality which tend to be aggressive, emotionally reactive individuals, personalities that like hurting and discomforting people, and some people always feel some kind of sadistic pleasure after giving discomfort to the people. So this is not done because they have to, that means they are behaving in a very deviant way. That is, they are trying to explore the things which is going to have very negative impact on people, and if the people are having some kind of a pain, displeasure, discomfort, they are happy. So they are under the type A personality. Coming on to the second point, that is the locus of control. External individuals are more likely to commit in deviant behaviors. The third is Machiavellism and love for money. So this is a way of manipulating people to get the personal benefits, and have the Machiavellians tend to behave more deviantly. The people who are having the lust for money, they want to earn the maximum money, so they might get themselves into a wrong activity which is called as a negative behavior. So these are all the individual factors because of which the deviant behavior is there. Either their personality is like that, or some external people are controlling you, or it could be some love for money which is happening. So again, all these things are really bad for the organization. Next is your personality flaw. People who have mental problems would probably show some kind of deviant behavior at work. For example, they are either in a state of alcohol or drug users or any of the intoxicated substance. This is another factor because of which it is one of the antecedents of the deviant behavior. As we have talked about earlier, there are certain individual factors which are responsible for the deviant behavior. The first, we talked about the kind of personality they have, the kind of locus of control. If the people are being controlled by the outside forces outside the organization, they would always be deviating from their normal behavior. If they have a love for money, if they have a love for giving discomfort to the others, if there is a flaw in their personality. So all these things are, the flaw in the personality, it could be under a state of intoxication of either drugs or alcohol. So they are engaging themselves into any kind of a deviant behavior, a negative deviant behavior. Next we have is the negative emotions. Their effects are mainly on justice perceptions, and by this way the deviant behavior occurs. Perception of injustice because employees seek fair and just treatments in their work environments. So negative emotions are also one of the major factors because of which there is a deviant behavior. So till now we have discussed the individual factors, which is one of the antecedents of the workplace deviant behavior. In this, first we talked about the kind of personality they have. Second is the locus of control, whether they are controlled by the external or internal. The third is the love for money they have. Next we have a personality flaw, and the last is we have a negative emotions. So these are the individual factors and one of the antecedents of the deviant workplace behavior. Now the second most important factor and the antecedent of workplace deviant behavior is a demographic factor. Now demographic factor is all related to the population, their types, the age, religion, etc. So the demographic factors we are discussing here is, the first is the gender, that is male and female. Next is the tenure of the job they have. Are they ad hoc, are they guest, or they permanent, or they temporary? Next factor is the education. Education plays a very significant role in relation to determining the deviant behavior at the workplace. Then of course we have the age, because the people who are in the different age groups are having a different behavior. Next is the status and numerous reference groups we have, religion and marginality positions. So all these factors, they come under the demographic factors and are responsible for the deviant behavior at the workplace. Now let me talk about now the situational factors, and again the antecedents of the workplace deviant behavior. So, we will be doing this in detail. The situational factors could be the social and interpersonal factors, and the second is organizational factors. So, let me discuss first the social interpersonal factors. Influence of work group, influence of superiors, opportunities, need, indebtedness, dissimilarities. The organizational factors include operational environment, organizational culture, job characteristics, company task structure involvement, counter norms, job satisfaction, ethical work climate, organizational commitment, organizational frustration, organizational justice, perceived organizational support and stress. So, we have seen here that there are a lot of different circumstances which are responsible for the antecedents of the workplace deviant behavior, as we have discussed the social and interpersonal factors. What kind of group influence are you facing? What kind of influence you have about the superiors of the organization? What are the opportunities which are available to them? What are their specific needs? What is the level of indebtedness they have? What is the dissimilarity are they facing? Now, these are the social and interpersonal factors, and they play a very significant role in determining the workplace deviant behavior, because this is when you talk about the situation here we are talking about the society at large and the interpersonal play and the factors which are responsible for the workplace deviant behavior. Now, coming on to the organizational factors, we have discussed here that the organization culture, the overall operating environment, the task structure for the organization, the satisfaction level of the employees, the organizational justice, perceived support and the kind of stress they are having. So, these are the factors which are antecedents of the workplace deviant behavior at workplace. Now, coming on to the causes for workplace deviance, this is definitely guided by some literature review. The first is the organizational injustice. According to Henley, 2005, they found some distributive, procedural and interactional justice were negatively correlated with deviance. Deviance is common when employees are impulsive, low in socialization and do not perceive that their organization is fair. The Blow and Anderson 2005 results revealed that distributive justice were negatively related to instigated workplace incively, while workplace exhaustion was completely correlated. The Aquino, Lewis and Bradfield 1999 results also support that interactional justice and negative effectively are strongly related to both forms of the deviance. So, this is very, very important factor, that if there is an organizational injustice, this is one of the deviation from the organization behavior, and which is guided by so many factors we have discussed here. So, next is your Borough 2001 findings. It showed that employees with aggressive personalities, they perceived more injustice and engaged in more deviant behaviors at the workplace than non-aggressive workers. So, here in 2001 there is a big study which was conducted, which resulted and the results are as follows, that the persons who are more aggressive in nature are having more aggressive personalities, they are more likely to be into the deviant behavior compared to those people who are non-aggressive in nature. So, because the non-aggressive people are very thoughtful, they are very rational, they will think before they speak, they will weigh the circumstances about the positive and the negative impacts of the organizational stress and the situations, and only then they would behave accordingly. But yes, the people who are aggressive will always show some kind of an anger, they will not care about the decisions which are important from the organization point of view. They would just do the behavior as they are liking, and they are more likely to be having more divergent in their behavior compared to the people who are non-aggressive in nature. Then is bureaucratization. Now, there is again, it is caused by some kind of a literature review. The Jelic and Ellen 2006, it results revealed the bureaucracy did significantly impact deviance, while both distributive justice and procedural injustice encouraged the deviances. The Zimmerman 2001 findings support that the theory that the firms may resort to formalization to eliminate the internal corruption and organizational deviance. So here if you talk about the crux of this impact, that is the bureaucratization, that is the array of rules and the regulations for the organization. See, the result is that the bureaucracy did significantly, it impacted the deviance, while both distributive justice and procedural injustice encourage the deviance. And of course, the theory states that if you resort to formalization to eliminate the internal corruption and organizational deviance. So the rules and the regulations which are a part and parcel of this aspect states that if you are adhering to the rules, if you are having some kind of clear demarcation, so the kind of deviance would be less compared to your personal biasness, etc., the deviations would be more. The third is the ethical climates. The Verdi 2011 showed significant negative correlations between the organizational misbehavior and overall climate. Thus, more positively organizational change is viewed, the less incidence of misbehavior. The dimensions of laws and rules showed strong relationship with the organizational misbehavior. Thus, more rules and laws implemented in an organization, the more incidence of misbehavior would be there. The Mount, Harter, Whiff and Berwick 2004 test results revealed that positive perceptions of the work situation are negatively related to the workplace deviance, while personality traits moderated this relationship. Organizational deviance was stronger with employees low in consequences and the emotional stability. The fourth aspect is your leadership. The leaders are most powerful determinant of the organizational culture. The leaders value taught to others and shape their behavior in the organization. Thus, if a leader were to manifest the deviant behavior, it will most likely to be mimicked by the co-workers. The Robinson and Kelly in 1988 found a positive relationship between the antisocial behavior demonstrated by an individual and those demonstrated by his or her co-workers. Thus, if a leader were to manifest their deviant behavior, it will definitely be picked by the subordinates. The works by Fleet and Griffin 2006 provide conceptual theory which suggested that leadership has a role to play in motivating the workplace deviance. Thank you so much. let us now discuss the consequences of workplace deviant behavior. We have already discussed the concept, the meaning, and the various insights relating to the workplace deviant behavior. Now coming on to the consequences of it. The consequences definitely are not good because the deviant behavior is not acceptable. It affects the well-being of the organization, it affects the overall reputation of the organization, and of course all the parameters are on the negative side and on the decreasing side of it. Now coming on to the first consequence of the workplace deviant behavior. The first is the economic cost. Now the researchers show that the organization bear significant economic loss from the deviant behaviors. The first is the decreased productivity, lack of product consistency, loss of inventory control, inconsistent service quality, effectiveness and performance of employees, damaged equipment. So overall we can say that the consequences of the workplace deviant behavior are very, very negative because you are playing with the organization, you are playing with the resources, you are losing money, you are losing time, you are losing resources. So as a matter of fact, the production would go down, the profitability would go down, the service quality would go down, the performance would go down, and for that matter, you are also damaging the equipment of the organization. Why one bad egg can hurt your business? So this has to be stopped, this has to be under control, and any kind of a workplace negative deviant behavior should not be allowed in the organization because it has tremendous impacts which is not good for the organization and the well-being of the organization. Now coming on to the social cost. Decreased reputation, decreased employee morale, increased revenge seeking in the workplace. It decreases the others' organizational commitment, it decreases in job satisfaction and increase in the turnover. Next is your sufferer, that is the psychological problems, aggressive behaviors, anxiety and hostile working environment. So as a matter of fact, if the deviant workplace behavior is continued, you have to pay a very high cost for that at the cost of the organizational profits, at the cost of the workplace commitment, at the cost of motivation, at the cost of production, at the cost of profitability. And definitely the aggressive behavior, the anxieties, hostile working environment, all these things will be very, very prevalent when you talk about the overall environment which is not good for the organization, that is the deviant workplace environment. Now coming on to the preventing of deviant behavior, that is we have seen the concept of the deviant behavior, the consequences of the deviant behavior. So there is a big important question to it that you have to control, you have to prevent the deviant behavior at any cost. Organizational behavioralists are not only interested in identifying the factors caused to deviant workplace behavior, they also try to give some recommendations about how to minimize and to restrict. It was given in 2009 by Rogejan. Promoting an ethical organizational climate is one solution. To show the ethical leadership is another. Installing toxic handlers, training programs, personal selection, that is the background check, polygraphic test, employment interview, honesty test, psychometric test, control, promoting pro-social behavior and ethics courses. Now there are so many things which we have discussed here. There are so many strategies which are very important that you have to control and prevent the deviant behavior of the people. Now as a matter of fact, the deviant behavior is a kind of an abnormality between an individual. So how we are able to control? That is, you keep on organizing some kind of seminars, some kind of lectures, some kind of workshops, so that if they keep watching it, somewhere down the line it will have some kind of a positive impact on their mind and brain. Secondly, you should try and show some kind of ethical code of conduct to them, show some leadership ethical styles to them. You must have a complete checkup before you give them employment in terms of their background, in terms of their, what have been they doing in their past, where they have been working. If they have been working somewhere, The feedback should be taken from their previous employer, and of course there are so many psychological tests now which are available, which gives the insight about an individual, that how an individual is behaving, why is he behaving, how is he behaving, what is the background. And these psychometric tests, honesty tests, etc., they are going to give very useful information in relation to that person, which is going to help us in promoting or exiting that individual out of the organization. Now let us come on to the solutions and proposals. Like for example, you are able to prevent the deviant behavior, so you must have a solution proposals in front of us. First is the organizational injustice. Interactional justice is perceived as fairness of interpersonal treatment the employee receives from a decision maker, whether he has treated with respect due to, my current job faces tremendous pressure from our demanding CEO. We are often labeled as big potato and stupid cow whenever we fail to understand his directives, often as a result of which we will spend the entire day cyber loafing, fake sick leave on the following day as a form of retaliation. So here we are seeing that the kind of a deviant behavior is increasing because of the injustice behavior of the superiors. So it is not a one-way communication, it is not a one-way traffic. There has to be a control of behavior on both sides. Even the superior must treat their co-workers in a very diligent way, so that their internal zeal to work increases. They put in their heart and soul when they work, rather than putting a complete pressure on them or abusing them with a very wrong language. So all these things, in fact, the people are going to retaliate after this, that she's putting a lot of pressures or he's putting a lot of pressure, so they will not put in their work. But yes, you have to motivate them in a very positive way, so that they are able to put in their best out of it, they are able to do their best exercise, they are able to produce the maximum out of it, and they are able to control the organizational objectives as such. Next is the communication. Leaders must learn to communicate more effectively with their subordinates, and name calling is certainly not one of them. Effective communication skill help the leaders to build up a strong relationship with the subordinates, while generally it leads to building an effective organization. Communication skills are needed to tackle the employees, specifically those with low specialization skills, and to diffuse the aggressive personalities. Thus, the Carnegie ageless communication skills on how to win and influence people over should be adopted. So, overall, the essence of communication is that if you have any kind of problems, sit across, talk, exchange your views, exchange your thoughts. If you have problems, please state. If he has problem, he will state, and somewhere down the line you'll have and come on to a solution. And this not only solves the solution, but also it helps in a strong building of relationship between superior and subordinate. So you should not be stopping yourself from a free flow of communication. This is the essence of good relationship. This is the beauty of relationship. This is the strongest bond of the relationship between the superior and the subordinate. So communication should be done at a very effective level, at a very clear level, and at all small levels in which you find some kind of problems are emerging, so that it can be stopped there and then. Now the next important solution as far as the controlling of the deviant behavior is concerned is practice empathy. Decision makers must practice empathy when dealing with subordinates, which may consist of different cultural backgrounds, beliefs and values, especially so in a multicultural society like Malaysia. For example, a manager must be sensitive to his Muslim employees during a fasting month and not to label the person as lazy. So this is one of a very important a solution to control the deviant behavior. That is, you must develop an empathy. You must practice the empathy. You must put yourself in other shoes and then think that whether this particular solution is right or wrong. We have given a very important example here, that a person who is following a fast for a month, so we should be very empathetic towards that individual, because the custom demands, the religion demands for him to be empty stomach throughout the day. So we cannot expect some kind of an energetic behavior from them. So must develop an empathetic attitude towards the month of Ramzan. So this is one of the most important solutions, that if anyone has got any kind of a problem specific to that religion or specific to him, we must develop a solution by creating a empathetic vision towards that individual, so that the other person also feels close to you, and the other person will also develop a good vision for you, good feelings for you, that this person understands my position and he'll carry on with the work. Then of course you should encourage the upward communication. Upward communication reminds the employees that they are played an important role in the organization. Employees' involvement help boost the self-worth, self-esteem, and reduce the incidence of workplace deviance. There is a downward communication, there is an upward communication. The downward communication is all about directives, rules, regulations, do's and don'ts, issue of memos, issue of the set of norms which you have to follow, etc., etc. But when it comes to the upward communication, it is in a form of a suggestion, it is in a form of grievance. So we must encourage the upward communication, because the upward communication is going to give you a boost to develop the communication as a whole. So next is your the procedural justice. The procedural justice explains how the employees perceive fairness of procedures. This usually relates to yearly appraisal and the promotion exercise. Employees usually perceive injustice when they are not given a raise that they deem due to, or denied a chance of promotion. The procedural transparency. The standardized and the transparency procedurals related to appraisal, promotion and increments are made known to all employees. Employees who did well in their appraisal must be made known to all employees on what basis he or she is being appraised on. So if you practice the transparency, if you practice the procedural procedural justice to them, people will always be in your favor. They will also feel that the organization is taking care of them, there is no biasness in their behavior. So practicing and procedural justice is very, very important to ensure the control of the deviant behavior, followed by procedural transparency. If the people feel that everything is cooked, everything is booked, everything is pre-cooked, the things will not be managed, the things will always be in a hayway, the things will always be in a problem. So if you show the transparency, procedural transparency to them, people will start loving your way of behavior, people will start loving in your institution, in your organization, and they will again be feeling motivated, they feel a part of the organization, and they always feel that everything which is being practiced here is fair enough. And so this procedural transparency and the procedural aspects should be shown as very, very transparent, not even shown, they should always and exactly be transparent for many of the issues for the organization to follow. Next is that you must have a grievance channel to enable the employees to give feedback to the upper management when they perceive they are unjustly treated. This feedback channel must allow the employees to come forward without fearing of repercussion from the organization or the manager that they are reporting on. Grievance report received must be treated with impartiality and discreet. These channel enables the employees to vent their frustration through a positive medium and thus reduce the deviance incidences. Deviance happens when the employee feels powerless to voice their unhappiness. So the grievance channel should be effective, should be practiced, and the forum should be such free that whosoever has got any kind of a problem, any kind of a grievance, that person should be free to come, free to follow, and free to share the thought that this is the kind of a problem I am facing, and the grievances must be handled impartially. If the people start feeling that the grievance cell is there but is defunct in nature, is partial in nature, then having a grievance cell will be of no use to them. So this kind of a notion must be built among the employees with the strong conviction that the grievance cell will take care of their problems, will take care of their issues, will be impartial in the approach, and it must be transported, it must be assimilation of this kind of a notion must be done at the organizational level with a free thought, with a free full conceptual aspects, with the conviction that their voices will be heard, and everything is kind of a impact will be very, very positive in this regard. Next is the distributive justice. The distributive justice refers to how employees perceive fairness in outcome related to pay. This occurs when employees starts to compare their pay with their co-workers and the amount of workload that they have to do. Complaints of unhappiness peaks during yearly bonus and increment distribution. Transparent distribution of the pay is another thing which is most important to be followed. Like, employees must be able to access the information with regard to their pay, grade, job description, basis of allocation of bonus and increments, and in reality this information is rarely made known and is usually manipulated by the office political interference. Next is the leaderships. The leaders play a crucial role in minimizing the deviance incidents in the workplace. Monkey see, monkey do, a closing statement made by Robinson. Employees do mimic actions made by their immediate managers. Then there are managers who indulge in political deviance, slave driving their employees to work beyond their job scope or working hours. Thus, it is not a surprise that incidents of sabotage is there. Next is your transformational leaders. It is pivotal that the leaders must set themselves as a role model to his or her employees. The leaders must take upon themselves to abstain from deviance act. Leaders may take an approach of a transformational leadership style whereby this inspirational approach inspire followers to forego the self-interest, encourage the followers to be creative, pursue the ambitious goals, and empower them to make decisions. Transformational leaders have a profound and extraordinary effect on the followers. They show sincere and genuine care to need of the followers. However, in reality, transformational leaders are rare and the managers cannot be turned into a transformational leaders overnight. Next is your working environment. Take the following case scenario. Ali worked in a manufacturing line assembling parts. He usually worked as a straight 10-hour shift, and he and his co-workers would just burn out. To combat that, Ali would try to get some breaks, which they will only allowed 2 breaks per shift. To do this, he would purposely send a glove down and would also cause the entire assembly line to break down. If the assembling machine shuts down, the line cannot go on. The whole production line shuts down. It takes at least 3 hours to fix. Ali is getting paid for 3 hours at least for just sitting around and the break he needed badly. So the work environment should be good with the good number of breaks so that the people should not burn out, and a time to relax should also be given to them. The short breaks must be given to them. The working environment should be good enough to take care of their physical health, the mental health, etc. Because if they start feeling fatigued, they will not be able to put in their best efforts. Next is the flexi-hour working schedule. This will also enable, like Ali, feel that organization care for their needs and hence reduce the incidence of deviations. Now, by Betticia in 1996 found that there is a negative correlation between the workplace environment and the production deviance. Employees involved in deviance as a means to gain the temporary control of their workplace, which they perceive as rigid. Thus, a flexi-hour working schedule which allows Ali to take a break when needed. It keeps them fresh and committed to the work rather than spending the hours planning the next deviant act. Next, we have a work environment to reduce unnecessary red tape. Red tape is excess of rules and regulations. So it must be stopped. And of course, the employee feels powerless when they cannot approach the management to view that their displeasure or grouses has to be go several layers before getting through. The gatekeepers may prevent them from reaching the decision makers. Thus, to gain decision makers' attention, they may end up restoring to deviant act. The next is formulate less rigid rulings. Rules and regulations must be flexible according to situations. For example, in the case of Ali, rules can be relaxed to accommodate more shorter breaks in between rather than 2 fixed breaks in a 10-hour shift. Rules and regulations must be designed to protect the safety and well-being of the workers. Rules and laws that create stress, such as those that Ali encountered, would most likely result in retaliation. So this must be stopped. The rules and the regulations should be flexible. There should not be excess of red tapeism or excess of rules and regulations. So let me give you a recap of what we did as far as preventing the deviant behavior is concerned, because this is the most important thing of today's lecture. You must promote the ethical culture. You must have an ethical leadership. You must have an overall transparent system. Excess of rules and the regulations should not be there. The system should be flexible enough. You should practice empathetic attitude towards the people and celebrate empathism. You should promote a pro-social behavior. You should have a grievance cell which is active, which is impartial, and which is good enough to take care of the problems of the people at large. Then before you take the selection of the personnels, a lot of care should be taken in relation to their reference checks, in reference to their background, reference to their what have they been doing in the earlier and the yesteryears. Then of course some kind of test must be given, like psychometric test, honesty test, lie test, etc. So the training programs must be given to them. If the people feel that they are intoxicated, so proper strategies must be devised to handle these people who are in lieu of the toxic handlers, etc. So overall, the ethical solutions they will definitely give a pave to control all these issues, and the deviant behavior should be controlled. Now, of course, interactional justice is perceived as a fairness of interpersonal treatment of the employees. So this must be given a due respect to them, and of course, the communication is the essence for the everything, and the problems should be solved there and then. So the communication should be very, very strong. The communication should be very, very good in terms of taking care of the problems and to tackle the employees, specifically for those low socialization skill and diffuse the aggressive personalities. Now there is an example here that the people who are more aggressive in nature, they are more likely to follow the deviant behavior rather than the people who are non-aggressive in nature. You should practice the empathy to the largest extent, to the deepest extent, to the last point of the organization, because if the empathy is practiced, this is going to control the deviant behavior of the people. Then of course you should upgrade the upward communication, because all the kind of problems, the fire, it comes from the downward. Whereas the upward communication is all about giving directions to them, etc. But when it comes to the encouragement of the upward communication, this must be encouraged at all levels, especially with the people with the reduced incidence of the workplace deviance, to boost their self-esteem, etc. Then the procedure must be transparent, and the procedural transparency should be followed even to the deepest extent, because if the things are under control, if the things are transparent, the problem is going to be reduced in the coming days. The grievance channel which has been followed must be effective, must be impartial, and must win the confidence and the trust of the people around in this organization. The transparent distribution of the pay should be there. The people must be able to access the information with regards to their pay grades, with regard to their job description, with relation to their allocation of bonus. Nobody should feel that only A is getting a good bonus, or he is getting a justice in terms of the work and the pay. Rest all others must also have the access to the system because nowadays we have the enterprise resource planning softwares, which in which everything is online and everything is under the public domain. So whosoever wants to access the system, they can access the system, and this will definitely prevail some kind of good sense which will prevail in the organization, that everyone is getting the transparency as far as the distribution of the pay is concerned, the grievances is concerned, the leadership is concerned. And of course, nowadays there is more role for the transformational leaders rather than the transactional leaders. The transformational leaders will transform you from inside, and you feel like working for the organization as a whole. The work environment should be very, very transparent. The work environment should be rampant. We should be able to control any kind of irregularities. We should ensure that right amount of breaks are given to the employees so that they do not start feeling fatigue, and they are rejuvenated after a certain period of time. So short breaks, long breaks should be a part of the job profile, which is very, very essential because we are all humans, we are not machines. We need breaks, we need some time to work, we need some time to relax, and after relaxing again the energy is fueled into that individual and he starts working again and again. Of course, nowadays there is a concept of flexible time working hours, which is definitely essence of today, because flexibility gives a human being a kind of a happiness which is very, very good. So flexible working schedule will definitely control the deviant behavior of the people. Then of course you should reduce the unnecessary the laws, the rules and the regulations to some extent, because more rules and regulations, the rigid schedules, it is going to give a lot of stress to the people around. So it should be checked. So thank you so much.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us a vivacious session, and I believe that all those who are working in different organizations or will be working may have get a deep idea, and you would be following rules and regulation and would be working in the betterment of yourself as well as your organization. So dear friends, if you have liked the lecture, do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. This lecture is going to be uploaded on YouTube very soon for you, and yes, as we said, keep writing us and keep watching us. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.